Well, I'd be delighted to now welcome Dr. Cindy Gnadinger. Dr. Gnadinger became Carroll University's 15th president on July 1st, 2017. Before coming to Wisconsin, where Carroll University is, just outside Milwaukee, she was president of St. Catherine's College in Kentucky and was vice president of academic affairs at William Peace College in Raleigh. She spent much of her career in a variety of leadership roles at Bellarmine University, right here in Capture's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. Dr. Natanger is a current and past member of numerous professional organizations, including the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities and the Council of Independent Colleges. She was one of Milwaukee's Business Journal's 2020 Women of Influence and was a 2013 Fulbright winner, participating in the International Education Administrators Program in France. Dr. Gnadinger is a native of Bullitt County, Kentucky, just outside Louisville. She is a 1989 graduate of Western Kentucky University and earned her master's and doctorate degrees in education from the University of Louisville. This afternoon, I get the pleasure of talking to her about balance, from implementing institutional initiatives to making enrollment marketing changes to reimagining one's day-to-day routine. Striking that institutional balance is a challenge for any institutional leader. It is my pleasure to welcome President Cindy Gnadinger. Good afternoon, President Gnadinger.
Hi there. It's so good to be with you today.
It is so good to be with you. From all of us at Capture and the slightly under 1,000 participants joining us today from 5 streaming platforms, I not only want to welcome you, but before we begin, I wanted to see if you can just spend some time telling us about Carroll University.
Oh, I would love to tell you about Carroll University. I am honored. Thanks for recommending and giving me a chance to talk a little bit about our historic institution. I'm so honored to be the 15th president of Carroll and the first woman to serve in that role. Carroll is Wisconsin's first and oldest institution of higher learning, and you can see on the screen our beautiful campus. We have 4 historic buildings on this campus, and it is even more beautiful in person than you see here on the screen. We started as the pioneering institution. That's why we call ourselves the pioneers, because we pioneered higher ed for the state of Wisconsin. We were actually founded 2 years before Wisconsin was even a state in 1846. And so this year we just wrapped up a whole series of celebrations for Carroll for our 175th anniversary. We had humble beginnings. We were founded with 5 students and 2 faculty members. And today, of course, we are a very robust small university, mid-sized university with over 3,400 students. And it's just an amazing place. We've grown to have 23 Division III athletic teams. We have over 23, or as you can see on the screen, 24,000 living alumni who are from coast to coast and around the world and doing pioneering work, I like to say. And so we are very proud of all of the things that Carroll has accomplished through its 175 years.
Thank you.
Too, here we've got, from our humble beginnings as a liberal arts institution. Today we offer, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. We have a doctorate in physical therapy. And as part of our need to continue to remain relevant and to answer the need in society, we decided to back engineer a nursing program. We can't do enough for nursing right now. It's a pillar program for us. And so we decided to do an associate degree program based in one of our local community centers that we partner with. And so students can come and get an associate degree in nursing, get a job, and then finish up that bachelor's degree with us online. So it's a new way to think about getting your BSN degree. So you can see we've got that one associate degree. It's fairly new. And we think a new model for how to prepare nurses and get more even bilingual nurses because that's our focus in that program. So doing lots of pioneering work still after 175 years.
Thank you for sharing. And that's actually something we're going to bring up a little bit later in the conversation about being a pioneer, even, during a pandemic and being innovative. But I want the audience to get a little sense of who you are and your background. I've had the opportunity to speak with you on a number of occasions. And one of the things, uncovering is that your path wasn't originally in higher education. It wasn't even in, even thoughts of going to post-secondary education. And so do you feel comfortable sharing with us, your education roots was actually in primary education, and then how did it transform into post-secondary?
Yes. No, my love is education. Absolutely. You're right. I when I was an undergraduate degree seeking student, I studied elementary education at Western Kentucky and loved every minute of it. And it wasn't until much, much later that I found my calling in higher ed. I was finishing my master's degree at the University of Louisville, and my faculty member asked me to stay after class and asked if I would join the research program and do some research. They had just received a federally funded $500,000 grant and wanted to know if I would be interested in joining their team as a research assistant. And so I was honored and thought I would be happy to do that. And that's sort of how I fell into higher education. And then, I went on from there and finished my master's degree, started into a doctoral program. And I did all of that while I was just taking a break from elementary teaching while I was a stay-home mom. I have 3 children and they're all adults now. But at the time, it gave me the opportunity to have some flexible schedule. And so I was doing my graduate degree program while I was still, at home with my kids when they were young. And so I took that first full-time position in higher ed as a faculty member and found really my love. I was still teaching, but working with pre-service teachers and in-service teachers at the graduate level and just loved it. But I quickly found a path with my faculty members and my dean, who asked me if I was interested in being the department chair for the graduate programs. And so I said, sure. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but if that was what the need was, I said yes. And then I found quickly that I was asked to be the dean of the School of Education, several years later. And then I got a call one day from our provost who asked me to come and talk with her and meet with her. And they were starting getting ready to develop a new position, an assistant vice president. This position did not exist, and she needed some assistance as we were growing the services we were offering to our campus in the provost office in academic affairs, with faculty development, with grant writing, and those kinds of things. And she wanted me to come over and work with her as her assistant vice president. And so I did. And we had a wonderful time together. She was a great mentor for me. And I remember during one of our one-on-one meetings, we were laughing, we were talking, I don't even know about what, but whatever I said to her, she laughed and said, you're going to make a great president one day. And that's, it hit me. I was very stunned. And I had never thought about the presidency. It was in that conversation that she planted a seed for me and then really supported my professional growth toward exploring a presidency. And so that's where it came from. It was well into my career after I had many opportunities. And, I have a lot of opportunities to make speeches and to talk with women at various stages. And I often say 2 things. One, when a door opens for you, walk through it. Because you don't know where that door is going to lead you. It's certainly, I walked through many doors. I had many opportunities afforded to me, and I always took those opportunities. And it led me from an elementary position to being president of a wonderful institution. So that's one lesson that I've learned. And then I also tell other women that it's our responsibility to mentor others. I had a wonderful mentor, and she really did plant seeds for me. She saw things in me that I didn't know, and I didn't see in myself at the time. And so I think it's our responsibility to mentor the next generation. And so I try to do that myself, and I encourage others to do the same.
If there was something that you took away from being an elementary school teacher that today you see in practice, would your employees today say it's patience? Would you say that you're a patient person? Or would you say it's actually the ability to convey a message one message to a lot of different people so they can all understand? What would you take away from that experience that you're applying today?
Okay, if anyone is watching that knows me, they're going to say it is definitely not patience. I am a very patient person. Yeah, so that's pretty funny. No, it is not patience. I am very impatient, and I have to slow myself down and recognize that we all move at different paces, and I have to remember that. But I do think it is about having a message and getting everyone to be with you on that message and on that journey. And so, when you're teaching 28 fourth graders, for example, they're all at different places in their learning. And that's kind of like my campus. We're working on a strategic plan, and they're all at different places in their comfort level about where we're going. And so, being able to deliver that message and being able to get people to get excited about that plan and move them along, I think that's what I bring from my elementary days the most.
You're having me jump to an area I was going to wait a little bit longer, but I feel like it's pertinent. The president really has a significant amount of influence on the message of an institution, what messages, what themes we're going to keep, what themes we might have to shelve, for now. And so can you share with us the message that you thought was maybe important pre-pandemic, and now your message today, where you feel like your critical message is, or maybe that's one the same message, what is, if you say, this is the message when I took over, I really felt we need to invest in. Can you kind of understand why you thought that should be the message and maybe some of the ways you're measuring it? Because for a lot of marketing leaders who are on today's call, they're always working with their president on that message, and then the enrollment leaders execute it. Would love to get your thoughts around this, especially from sitting at Carroll.
It's a great question. And I think it's one that we're all still trying to figure out, as we move out of the pandemic and what this post-pandemic world will look like for everyone. I think, for us at Carroll and for many institutions, I think a lot of us, really highlight the community that our students will come and join and what it would be like. And I think the pandemic really upended that for us. All of our communities have unique features about them, and we try to highlight those when we're doing our visits, campus visits, and let our potential students and family members know, like, if you join our community, this is what it will be like. And this is what makes us unique in our community. And so with the pandemic, our communities really did, we halted it. We kind of went inward and everyone sort of paused. And I think it's trying to find our way back to our community. And the fact that we all went home, we all worked from home, we stayed sort of, to ourselves, away from the community, was difficult for all of us who believe so strongly in that community. And that's what we're selling at all of our institutions. And so I think that has been one of the messages that we are trying to, again, pull back together and talk a lot about. I think for our campus community, and I can talk a little bit later about this too, the pandemic has really challenged us as we try to come back. And again, we're no different than other industries in that some of our employees felt like, I really like this remote flexible learning. I really like being able to, do my work from home. I really like to, stay home several days a week. And can I still do that? I can get my work done. And then those of us in enrollment, and I count myself leading, that enrollment team, working with them. We're trying to sell a vibrant community when our parents and our students come to campus. So I don't want our doors closed because they're working remotely. I want when they walk around campus to see this wonderful, vibrant community at Carroll University. So that's been a challenge. I mean, certainly you can do your work from home, but what we're showing these parents and these students that are coming for visits is we are a place of community. So I think that's been one of our biggest challenges is certainly you could do your work from home, but it's easier for us to share with our potential students and their families what we are when we're together.
I think that's interesting. You just mentioned about the balance from working from home, because as you think about your career, right, the importance of having the opportunity, right, and yet the need to bring it, finding the balance because the need to bring in the community back and the importance. You had said something to me in an earlier conversation I thought you were going to bring up, so I am going to bring it up now. Mm-hmm. You mentioned to me something about emphasizing when you came on board that we were the pioneers and really thinking about that as a critical message and reinforcing it. And so maybe you had like some of those aha moments about, hey, why we have to do this. Can you kind of go a little bit more into that thought making process that you went to say, hey, we're going to move in this direction, team. Mm-hmm. And, also maybe give the team, or if you could share with us, did the team come with you, or were there some things that you did as a leader to get the team to move with you? Because a lot of schools are, reinventing their message.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. We've talked about this too, so we're the pioneers. And I mentioned at the very beginning that, we call ourselves the pioneers because we're the first. We're the first institution of higher ed in Wisconsin. We pioneered higher education for the state of Wisconsin. And so we're really proud of that. But we also, know that the term pioneer and thinking about pioneers has a negative connotation for many people, especially when we think about how our indigenous peoples were treated in the days of the European influence on this country as they came through. And so we're sensitive to that as well. We, our campus, especially, we have effigy mounds on our campus. It was home to indigenous peoples well before we were there. And so we try to pay homage to that, but also recognizing the pioneering work that happened as Carroll came to be the first institution. So do we keep the name pioneers? Do we not? Do we embrace it? And so we've chosen to embrace it. And we use it really as an action word. And certainly we are the pioneers, but we more as our message and what we try to share with people is talk about, if you go to our website, our landing page, the first thing it says is, how will you pioneer? And so we talk about your pioneering adventure. We say to our students, after 4 years here, you'll start your own pioneering work. And then we talk about the alumni who, and I mean, I could go on. I could spend the entire day talking about the people who have, come through our doors in the 175 years, who have gone on to do incredible pioneering work in medicine, in the food industry, in the arts and entertainment industry. So, I mean, just all sorts of things that they've been pioneers and in their own field of study. So that's how we've decided to embrace and keep the brand of the pioneers. And I think people are good with that. We love that we're the first. We love the history of our place. And so we've chosen to embrace that and then challenge all of the students who come to us to pioneer their own journey and to create that pioneering path for themselves.
You share about that pioneering spirit from, when we spoke about the student and the curriculum that they're a part of and, the path that they can take while as a current student. When you say the word the pioneering, how do you put that into practice or get your prospective students excited? Is there anything unique that you can share?
We tell our story. I mean, it's so fun to say, what will you do? Will you be like Donald Gerke? He was a food inventor and he invented SpaghettiOs. And so he's going to say
SpaghettiOs was part of my food pyramid.
How about that? So everybody knows SpaghettiOs. And actually we also say, and that orange color wasn't just by accident because our colors are orange and white. And so, we kind of laugh about that. Like, so he carried that Carroll spirit with him into his work and take a look at SpaghettiOs. Or, Dan Von Hoff, and you can Google him. He is one of the world's leading authorities on pancreas cancer. He has pioneered therapies that have changed the world and saved countless lives. And he's a Carroll pioneer, and he contributes his success back to his days at Carroll. And so whether it's pancreas cancer or another cancer, myself included, I'm a cancer survivor. I am grateful to people like him, and he got his inspiration, from Carroll. Fred McMurray, my three sons, he's a Carroll pioneer, and he was the first person to be named a Disney legend. He's had all those Disney movies and television fame from the 40s, 50s, 60s. And so, he did pretty well for himself as well. Or, there's even Rob Lampier. He created the software that went up on the Hubble Space Telescope for the camera. So all of these images we have from space, from the Hubble Space Telescope, thanks to a Carroll pioneer. So, I mean, so we just, listen, I could do this all day long. I mean, it's amazing. But, so there's something about this amazing historic, campus that will inspire you to create your own pioneering journey.
You brought something up, your battle with cancer.
Yes.
And you've had two very unique experiences, not only the battle with cancer, but you're one of few presidents that's had to close a college down. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My question is a two-part in that you feel comfortable maybe sharing briefly about those experiences, but then how have you applied those experiences during the pandemic? Because then I want to spend some time on working with teams, managing teams in a pandemic and helping them find the balance. Like, hey, you have to let things go. Not everything can be important. And what are some of your practices that may be derived from those two unique experiences? So whichever one you want to start with first, but I think it would really give some insight to then that decision-making process you've employed.
No, I don't mind talking about that at all. I consider those, defining moments in my life, professionally and personally. And again, I have, drawn from those experiences and they've taught me life lessons that certainly I have used. And I tackle other challenges and crises that come my way in similar ways. I mean, you mentioned St. Catherine College, this wonderful, beautiful, small place in central Kentucky. When I arrived there, I was hired to be the vice president for academic affairs. And there were some challenges with a couple of the academic programs. I have a strong background in accreditation. So I studied everything about this institution and the academics and knew I could make a difference and help, what was needed there. So I was excited to take on this position. It was a lateral move for me. I was a VP of academic affairs at one place and made a lateral move to come to St. Catherine. And shortly after I arrived, and I won't go into all of the details, I learned that we had some real serious problems in the financial aid and compliance area. That was not under my purview as VPAA. But it really did impact all of us. And so the president, who had been a longstanding president, decided that he would retire at this point. And the board came to me, long story short, and asked if I would be willing to step in and lead the college through this really, really tumultuous time. And they wanted, for me to figure out, one of three things: either see if this could be a viable institution, explore a merger, or if we had to close our doors, work through that process. And honestly, it was the most stressful 18 months of my professional life. It was a complicated situation. And again, I won't go into all the details today, but basically some things were out of our control and some things were not. So it was important to me as the leader now to distinguish between those two things. And I worked on the things that we could control. And that's an important piece of what I've learned in these defining moments in my life. And so I also am a person that looks at extremes. So I always kept in mind, what will success look like if I go this path, and what does failure look like? Worst case scenario, best case scenario. So I always kind of kept that in mind as well. And so I made a plan and I worked the plan. And so when I started with viability, let's work on how to make this the most viable campus. So I put together, a plan A, and I always have a backup plan, Nappy, always. Plan A, plan B, plan C. Well, I got to tell you, on this campus, I got all the way to plan Z. I mean, I tried every scenario for viability, and I realized that was not going to happen, unfortunately. So then I turned my attention to merger acquisition. And I worked all aspects of a plan. I created my plan and some backup plans, and I explored all opportunities for any kind of merger acquisition. But in the end, for, again, a variety of reasons, it became clear that was not going to be an option. And that closure really was the only option that we had after these 18 months. And so I began working. I have to develop a plan, how to close an institution, which not a lot of people have experience with. And so made our plan and worked our plan all the way through that process. And it's painful. If anyone has ever had to close a campus, it is a painful process for our students, our faculty, our staff, the community. And it's very similar to a death. And you go through the stages of grief and loss in that process. But because I planned it so thoroughly, I was feeling at peace in the end that we left no stone unturned, and it was the right way and the only answer that we could do. So, after that, I have had other times in my leadership where crisis management was needed. Obviously, the pandemic being an obvious one. And again, following the same plan of action. Identify what I can and cannot control, make a plan, and work the plan, and always have a backup.
I must ask, was there something that you told to your team and you said, you know what, we're not going to worry about that during the pandemic? And they were shocked that you said that. Like, what do you mean? And when you're like, you know what, we're going to focus on this. And can you give it what that was and why you took that position? Because I'm sure there's someone else out there that's wondering, I can't let this go. And we're not talking about letting it go like Elsa and Frozen. But, when everyone is just so stressed, they're trying to do everything. Is there an example?
That's a good question. Let me think about whether there were times where I said, no, we're not going to focus on that. I'm trying to figure out this, these are the areas that we need to focus on. But we always, again, because I live in that world of extremes as well, we had to say, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing and scenario that could happen on as we do our, what I called scenario planning. I feel like I've become a master at scenario planning. On what's the worst that could happen and the best that could happen. So I'll think on that. If it comes to me, I'll certainly share that. But I have to say, it was during that first year at Carroll, 4.5 years ago, that I had my cancer diagnosis. And I couldn't believe it when the doctor told me I had cancer, because the only thing I could think of was, I do not have time for this right now. Just started a new job. We've got a strategic plan that we're finalizing. And then, I paused. And then I began to do what I always do. And that's, create my plan and work my plan. And I had to recognize what was in my control and what wasn't in my control. And with cancer, it's the same thing. I mean, not everything's in my control, but there were things that were, some things that were in my control. So I made my plan to manage through the aspects that I had control over. And so I tackled that just like I tackled the issues at St. Catherine, the pandemic, and everything else. So those are the life lessons that have taught me that to identify what I have control over and what I don't, work on what I do, create my plan, and work the plan. That's been 4.5 years ago. So far, so good on the cancer. So
I want to, not like congratulations, but I want to say, how do you parlay that and convey that kind of decision-making process? I want to spend some time to your enrollment team. Is there a series of metrics now, or just things that you focus on that maybe were not as important when you first came in because of your plan? And if so, do you feel comfortable being specific, saying, now for our enrollment team, we really focus on this, or we're putting a little bit more emphasis on that because of the way we're planning? Can you give us any insight to what has changed, whether when you first started to where you are today?
Certainly, I think a lot of people can relate to this. Mm-hmm. I think when I first arrived, we were experiencing some nice areas of growth, in the undergraduate area. Mm-hmm. We had some new programs, and growth was a part of our, I would say, our annual process. And then I think for now, we are satisfied not to grow. And that's part of our plan. I came in, I just wrapped up year 5, and I had a different vice president at the time. But, the very first thing, my first conversation I had was, okay, we know the demographics. We know where we're headed. This is not, what's our plan? And so we talked about what is the plan. So again, I'm a planner. And so you don't wait until it's all upon you to say, now what are we going to do? You have to make your plan and start working that plan. So when it's here, that demographic cliff, if you will, we're ready for it. And so that's what we started planning 5 years ago for that. And I'm happy to share, some of the things that we did. We were an institution, my apologies, at Carroll that were solely focused on the undergraduate population that primarily came from our state and Northern Illinois. And so I knew that was an area that we really had to change. We couldn't, because I knew what the demographics were there. So if that's all we're going to focus on, that's going to be a problem for us as we move forward. So we knew we had to create new markets for us in the 5 years. And so we worked on that for undergraduate, and we were very strategic about that. I think the new markets that we were looking at might not work for others around the country, wherever they are. So people have to look at what would work for you. We also had some markets some years back that were really positive and productive for us that we had let go. So we've got a lot of alums in those areas, and we wanted to renew and reconnect in those markets. So we put together a plan, and we've been working that plan. And then we also knew, because we have graduate programs and we've been very successful in those graduate programs, that staying steady at the undergraduate level with these new markets, and then increasing graduate programming in areas that are high need areas in our region would be the way that we would, manage our way through these tumultuous times in enrollment.
You brought up something interesting. You said alumni connection and leveraging alumni during the enrollment process. Was that new for Carroll, or was that something that was happening, but you expanded it? Do you mind elaborating a little bit further? Because this is something Scott Jasek talked about yesterday about what was going on at State University of New York at Oswego.
Completely new concept for Carroll. It's not something we have done in the past. And we have alums who really want to, reach out and support and help. And we need to take advantage of that. I mean, they're our best recruiters at times. We've got a wonderful enrollment team. But, when you've got people who are there all the time in these new markets, so we've been able to tap into those. And one of the areas we were talking about too was down in Puerto Rico, and we've got a lot of alumni in Puerto Rico who came to Carroll. Some stayed in our area, some went back to Puerto Rico, and so when we went back down to sort of renew some of those contacts, it was our alums who took us back to the schools, the high schools in the area to really help reinstill and connect us with the people we needed to be connected with. So it was wonderful. And we tied that into a wonderful alumni event. And so it's just great.
So you now created, you said, okay, we have to reimagine the territories we're looking at. We're going to engage with our alumni. You thought about some new markets, right? Or not new markets, but new curriculum or new programs to think about. How have you thought about, the culture, thinking about the culture of your team? Mm-hmm. So both knowing the culture of the community and the culture of your team. So both the enrollment team and the marketing, what is that culture? What do you do to create it or instill it? But then how are you creating that culture at Carroll? And what are some of those things that you're doing as the leader? Yeah,
so I think, coming out of the pandemic, it's been difficult for us, just like it has been for a lot of people. And so, I noticed, one of the things, is this the time you want to talk about our reset?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
Listen, I think that kind of leads me right into that, because that's part of the culture. So it's always been such a wonderful, very positive, and just a tremendous place to work. And it still is. But I've noticed, and I really noticed this, this past November, I was at one of my senior team meetings, so vice presidents and me around the table, and I looked around at my team. They're phenomenal. And they looked so tired. And I just thought to myself, you all look like I feel. So I look probably just like them. But I remember thinking, okay, it's time to sort of back up and figure out how we can change this, because when you're in it, it's almost like being on a roller coaster. I mean, it's just, you're going and going. Yes. We didn't take anything off anyone's plate, but we have to do it this way. We added contact tracing, we added testing, we added all of these extra things. And then
you're speaking the audience language. Yes.
It's been overwhelming for all of us, for everyone. And so we sort of hit the wall, I guess. I mean, they were still going, but it was almost just going through the motions, because it hit me. I probably had been going on much longer, but I just paused long enough myself to look at my team, and I just saw the exhaustion in them. And so then I knew we've got to reset. So I decided to, at the end of the semester, a few weeks later, we met, and I said, all right, we're going to bring our goals back. I want us to all look at our goals midway through the year. And I want you to tell me what you want to take off your plate. We'll shift our goals.
You do this for every division leader, or for
every vice president, who oversees a division. So we had to reset as well. So it starts with the senior team.
Mhm.
And it was just being able to have that conversation. I could see sort of the relief. I can't say that my team took a lot of things off their plate, but knowing that they could was like just so relieving to them. And so we talked about, as we go into the spring semester, we come back after the holidays in January, you need to take off what you need. You've got permission. So let's talk about it. Take off your plate what you need to take off. And the understanding that they could do that was so welcoming. And then I told them, you need to do this with your team. You need to talk with your teams about what can you let go? What can you take off? Because they're as exhausted as you are, as we are.
Right.
And so the conversation, was beginning. And we had just received some feedback at the end of the semester from our campus community about how they were feeling. And it's no different than how the nation's feeling, how we're all feeling, tired and worn out. And it's the pandemic fatigue. Then we were seeing the beginnings of the Great Resignation.
Right.
And so the Great Resignation did two things, I think, for my campus. One, it dumped more work on everyone who was already tired because they had to cover for their colleague who just left until we could fill that position. And then it also made them upset that like their good friends were gone, so they were losing their good colleagues and peers. And so they wanted me to do something about that. They wanted me to fix that. They wanted me to stop that. And it wasn't enough for me to say, Google it, everybody. The Great Resignation. It's a real thing. It's happening everywhere, not just Carroll. That didn't matter. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted me to fix it. So we decided to seek the help of a consultant, bring someone in from the outside and work with every team and talk about what they could do to empower themselves to fix what they were feeling. Set some goals for themselves, short-term and long-term goals, and to make your environment better. And this is what we did all spring. This is how we reset this spring.
Yep.
And it started with us, senior team. We had to model. We're gonna do the first part. What can we do for ourselves? And we got going. And then it went all semester long. And we just had our last sessions in May. So it took all semester. And, at first it was, we want the administration to. And the consultant said, no, not what the administration can do. What can you do? And so what it ended up doing was putting the focus back on our employees and then empowering them to take control of their joy, of their work. And by the end of the semester, the difference in the culture, because that's what originally you asked about in this question, was significantly different. It was, by February, things were so dreary and sad for my campus. And by the end of the semester, I don't want to pretend that everything's perfect, but I can tell you a significant change had begun on our campus, and people did feel more empowered and they did feel better. And they knew that the administration recognized that things are hard and that we were listening. And so we are very excited to enter into a new academic year next year. People have plans. They've created the plans. They're their goals, their work, and we know what those are and we support them.
Do you mind if you're able to share an example or two of something where you saw that transformation where someone thought it was someone else's responsibility and then by the end said, wow, this is really up to me and I am empowered to make this now my responsibility? Can you give an example when you just saw, wow, this did work, right?
Yeah, I think let me share this. We have a Center for Graduate Studies, and it is about 2 miles from campus. So a lot of our grad faculty and our grad programs, that's where they're housed, about 2 miles from campus. And in fairness, they really feel detached from our campus. That's fair. And they did a good job of reminding us of that through their conversation. So what they wanted was a constant, we want the administration to, we want the administration to, we want the administration to. But instead, they turned it around and said, we want to be the center for people remembering that we're here. So why don't we? And so they decided that let's invite our provost and the dean, because the deans, there are 4 deans of 4 schools that we have, and their programs are all housed here. And so they invited the deans to have their weekly dean meetings out there for a month. And so, which was what, so they put it back on it so they can be reminded that we're here and we're not forgotten about. And so that was their idea. The dean said, what a great idea. We'll come out there and we'll have our meetings there. We'll visit around. And so they were empowered to, rather than saying, woe is me, no one knows we're here, no, everyone has forgotten about us. They said, let's invite the deans to have their meetings out here and so forth. So again, President's on her way out there when she is back on campus in 2 weeks. And so I'll have a meeting out there. So anyway, it was a wonderful idea. There were many more like that, but you get the idea.
I want to go back to a question I forgot to ask. How do you see the enrollment landscape changing? And what advice would you give to some enrollment leaders? And that's the landscape changing, whether it's demographic, whether it's what parents are expecting. You're unique as being a comprehensive university. You are teaching not only that high school to college transition, adult learners. You have you have probably a stronger fluency maybe than other individuals in your role. But if there's any insight you can share with us on how you see the landscape changing.
Yeah, well, first I will say this. We had a lot of conversations that people were talking about when when the whole nation went remote for that spring, when the pandemic first hit us in March of 2020. And there were lots of conversations that it'll never be the same. Higher ed will, be remote forever, and that kind of thing. I can tell you that that's not true. I mean, our students wanted that experience back on our campuses more than ever, and longed for it, needed it. And so I think the traditional higher ed institution is not going away. But I do believe, and I have felt this for quite some time, that it is changing. We are morphing, and we're seeing it right before our very eyes right now in this era. So I think we have to be flexible, and we know how to do that. Our faculty know how to do it. Our staff know how to do it. We know how to be flexible. And I think that's what our students and our parents want the most, is flexibility from us. Now, what does that mean? That's up for each of us to decide, and how flexible we want to be. I can tell you 5 years ago when I arrived at Carroll, we did not have a single fully online program, but we do today. And I think now that doesn't mean it's replacing. Online is going to replace what we do in our face-to-face instruction. But I do think if we want to be responsive, this is not a new concept. We have to figure out a way and what that means. And so for those who are still kind of holding out on that, I would encourage us to think, how can we be more flexible for the people that we're serving? I do believe that our students, they don't want to sit in their parents' basement and take school that way. But I do think there are some students who want a more flexible model, whether it's while they're working and going to school, whatever that might be. We do have to be thinking about that, and the adult learner too. There are a lot of adult learners. And then the other thing I will say is there is truly a need for the credential based education. And that's different than what those of us in traditional four-year education schools, think about. So if people are out there and you haven't jumped into certifications or credentials, that's something I would say it's probably time. And you don't do that on your own. You do that in partnership with your communities. So we've got a variety of credentials that we have established. Everything from, policing and public safety with some of our community members. One of the first ones we did was contact tracing. And we did the training for contact tracing for our county when the pandemic hit. And then it's just, from dyslexia credential that we offer to our school districts. To you name it. So a lot of things in that credential world is very different for us in how we think about it. Certainly our School of Education has done that for many years, but now we're looking at it more broadly for other areas in our university to think about credentials as well.
President Natanger, I just have to say on behalf of all of us, thank you. Your insight over the past 40 minutes has been amazing. And so before we go, I actually want to leave you with something that you said so I can share with the entire team. It's how you respond to those challenges and barriers that will really define how your life goes, says Gnadinger. I often say, trust your instincts and listen to yourself. There will be barriers always in your way, but don't make excuses. I had found this quote of something you said. And so I not only want to say thank you for sharing it when you did, but it's relevant today. And to everyone out there, I hope I take that quote and relate it to some of the other things that President Natanger shared with us about thinking about what you can control and what you can't, the best case and worst case, the having the plan. And for those enrollment and marketing professionals, when you think about being creative, thinking about outside of your market, also thinking about your alumni engagement. This is the second expert we heard talk about it, and really involving your alumni connections and realizing it's not only just about enrollment and marketing. And to the executive team, it's okay to reset again, but with a plan. President Natanger, on behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing your day with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been great to be here, and I wish you all the best as you continue on with the conference. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, President Natanger.